evening, everybody, and welcome to our fourth webinar of the PhD tour. This PhD tour is organized by the Embassy of France in India. And right before I start introducing the panelists as well as the alumnus that we have with us today, I'm going to be introducing the objectives of this PhD tour. So why the Embassy of France in India has decided to organize this tour. The objectives of this PhD tour is basically to provide an idea of the scientific landscape in France and know more about the different domains. So as you know, the thematic today is health sciences. And this thematic has garnered a lot of interest from the public as well as the private domain, especially because of the situation that we are in today. So right before we start, we're going to be speaking today about things like PhD programs, scholarships, fellowships, international collaborations, as well as how to apply. So right before we start, I'm going to introduce the panelists that we have with us today and what exactly they do. So the first person that we have with us today is Dr. Jonathan Eubank, who is a Senior Research Director at INSERM and also a group leader at the Center for Immunology in Marseille, Lumini. So this center is affiliated with the University of Aix-Marseille as well as the Turing Center for Living Systems. And today he's going to be talking about the center's PhD program for integrated disciplinary research in biology. The second panelist that we have with us today is Dr. Andreas Niebel, who is the Director of Research at CNRS. And he is also a group leader of the Endosymbiotic Infection and Nodule Development at LPIM. The third panelist that we have here with us today is Dr. Catherine Schuster, who is the director of the Doctoral School of Life Sciences and Health at the University of Strasbourg. And from 2013 to 2020, Dr. Schuster was the nationwide coordinator for the evaluation of research in life science environment and health for the High Council of Research and Higher Education. And the fourth panelist that we have here with us today is Dr. Sandrine Ongeri, who is a professor of medicinal chemistry at the Faculty of Pharmacy in Université Paris. And she's also the deputy director of one of the 200 doctoral schools at Université Paris Saclay. And currently the school has 300 PhD students registered there. So they're going to be telling us all about the PhD programs, the scholarships, as well as any current positions that they may have. But right before that, I should also tell you that apart from the information that we're going to get today about these programs and the scholarships and the application methods, we're also going to hear about an alumnus's experience in France. So an Indian researcher's real experience in France, his professional experience, his personal experience. And for that today, we have with us Dr. Iyanar Vetrievel, who is going to be telling us about his experience. So let me just introduce him as well. He has done his PhD from University of Nantes in the west of France, and he has also continued there for his postdoctoral studies. So currently he is a clinical scientist in a healthcare startup in Bangalore in the south of India, which is called Buddhimed Technologies. So welcome to all of the panelists here today, and we look forward to hearing from you all. But right before we hear from the panelists, just to begin with, we're going to also hear about the scientific landscape in India and the structural and functional differences of doing a PhD in India as well as in France from our Deputy Attaché for Scientific and University Cooperation in India, in the south of India. And her name is Dr. Ambika. So Ambika, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'm Ambika, as Krusha said. I'm the scientific coordinator and deputy attaché for scientific and university cooperation. I'm located in Bangalore, and I manage the south of India along with the attaché, Dr. Francois Xavier. It's good to have such a great line of panelists to address your questions and concerns today. And I'm sure we will answer most of the queries here in the last 30 minutes of Q&A session that is reserved exclusively for that. However, I would like to brief you a bit about the scientific landscape in India, as Krusha mentioned, in this field of health sciences, and how that is going to benefit when you think of doing a PhD in France. So in India, the health science sector is huge. And fortunately, we have a good number of universities and colleges educating the students about different aspects of health sciences, ranging from basic and fundamental research to more like public health platforms. But what we miss here in large numbers is bringing together partners from academia and industrial actors under one roof. This is exactly what organizations like CNRS in France, equivalent to, let's say, CSIR in India, they do. So PhD in the health sector in France provides objective analysis and very effective solutions that addresses the challenges facing the public and private sectors around the world. So both academic and mission-oriented institutions are involved in biomedical research ranging from universities, including university hospitals, which is actually a very good bonus point to have, to public research institutes and foundations. So we can't wait to hear more from our panelists and what they have to say about all that. But before they get into that, let me just explain to you a bit the general application process of doing a PhD in France. And we can actually take this discussion further to our final question and answer session. So typically, a PhD in France takes around 3 years, and this is extendable to 1 more year. In contrast to the 5+ years of PhD in India. And you need a master's degree to enroll for your PhD. If there are exceptions, that is, we'll have a room for discussion about these exceptions during our final question and answer session. So before you enroll into a PhD program, you need to find your thesis supervisor and your topic, which is quite obvious, but there are 2 ways of doing this. One is directly writing to the PI or your thesis supervisor and sending him or her your CV and SOP. And no research proposals are entertained at this stage, and this is applicable only to science and engineering. And another way is to approach the PIs through different portals. There are Campus France portals. There are other portals like Association Gregory Bernard. I think Krusha, a moderator of the day, will provide the links for you in the chat box later on during the closure of the session. So anyway, so once you apply for your PhD and once the PI accepts you, the doctoral school also should accept you. And let me tell you that the funding is mandatory for PhD. And if you're not supported by fellowships, you could be actually funded by the host university by signing a work contract for 3 years. And from the embassy side, we offer you short-term fellowships for students doing in PhD in India for about 10 months to have a short program in France through Raman Sharpak Fellowship. So one can also do a PhD in France through the bilateral agreement between Indo-French labs via CEFIPRA projects. So apart from these fellowships, there are a number of opportunities to obtain fellowships which are offered by the French institutions themselves. I hope we can have a little bit of explanation on this from our panelists during the Q&A session. So without further ado, I pass on the floor back to our moderator, Krusha, and have a nice PhD tour.
Thank you so much, Ambika, for that information. So I think we can start off with the panelist intervention. So what we can do is we can start with Dr. Jonathan Eubank.
Hello, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about PhD life in Marseille. So as you heard in the introduction, I work in an immunology center. That immunology center is one of the life science institutes on a university science campus. And the science campus is part of Aix-Marseille University. So Aix-Marseille is the largest Francophone university. So it has 80,000 students with about 10,000 foreign students. It has 12 doctoral schools covering the different disciplines, including a doctoral school in life and health sciences. So the Life and Health Sciences Doctoral School has about 650 PhD students enrolled currently. And of those, some 20% are foreigners, so not French. The typical path, as you heard, is in the French system, which is a European 3+2+3, so 3 years undergraduate, 2 years master's, 3 years PhD. And as you heard, there are exceptions for people, and generally for sciences, it's for people who have research experience who may be able to come in without having a master's degree. So also recapping a little bit what you just heard, there is central funding. So the research provides to the doctoral schools funding to allow the doctoral schools to organize every year recruitment campaign for PhD students. So for example, the Health and Life Sciences Doctoral School in Marseille, 30 PhD fellowships that are put forward in an open competition. Now, almost always in that context, it's students who've done a master's locally who will be chosen in these more or less internal competitions. But in parallel, there are other forms of funding. As you heard, candidates can come with their own fellowships. Laboratories may have external funding allowing them to hire directly a PhD student. And there are also an increasing number of opportunities in France to join dedicated PhD programs. So the institute where I work is part of a larger virtual institute, which is called the Century Center for Living Systems. And that has its own PhD program. So Century has about 15 PhD fellowships available each year. There is a campaign that opens in January. And in this case, it's all of the host laboratories that are part of Century can put forward a project. These are published on the internet. Applicants interested in particular projects will then apply, and then they'll get invited to Marseille for in-person interviews where they'll meet not only the supervisors of the projects they're applying for, but several other projects as well. And then if there's a match between the applicant and the host lab, then that person is offered a 3 or 4 year fellowship. So even for those people who've got 3-year fellowships, there are additional funding opportunities, especially in the life sciences, from, for example, the Medical Research Foundation in France, that allows you to extend for a 4th year. One frequent question is about language. So in Marseille, all of the PhD level courses are given in English. And for example, I had a PhD student come from India. He spent 4 years here and he left without speaking a word of French. So it's perfectly possible, if you don't want to learn French, to live in France without this. But it's strongly encouraged if you want to involve yourself in the local life and the local culture. I think that's the main points that I'd like to cover, and I'd be happy to answer questions in the next session.
Thank you so much, Professor. So we can move to Dr. Andreas Niebel.
So can you hear me? All right. Well, my colleague Jonathan has said a lot of things that I was going to say too, so that it's going to be a lot redundant. Maybe what I could add, because I don't have the exact figures in Toulouse, but Toulouse is also in the southwest of France, a quite big university with many students and also many foreign students. What I could tell you maybe is a little bit more from the lab point of view and the team point of view, which I think that Jonathan didn't cover. So we are a lab which has several affiliations. So we depend on the University of Toulouse, but we also have researchers from 2 institutions. So the Center for National Sciences, which is the CNRS in France, And we also depend on the institute, the National Institute for Agronomical Sciences and Ecology more recently, which is called INRAE, INRAE. So people basically in our institute are either paid by the CNRS, like I am, or by INRA, or by the university. The language in the lab, the scientific language, is English. We have all our conferences and exchanges in English. So this may be contrary to some of what some people think. This allows foreign students from non-French speaking countries to be well integrated scientifically. I agree though with Jonathan that it's easier to integrate in social and local life if you do speak French, but we have many examples of foreign students which don't. What else could I tell you? I could tell you maybe the structure of my group as an example. So the institute that is paying me, the CNRS, welcomes foreign researchers very much. So I for example, I was born in Germany, did my PhD in Belgium, and got a position in south of France. This is quite typical. We have from 13 groups in our institute, there are 4 group leaders which are foreign. And coming back to the structure of my group, I have many foreign lab members. So I have 2 postdocs from South America, one from Argentina, one from Brazil. I have a postdoc from Vietnam, and I'm trying to get Indian students at the moment through an institute which is called CEFIPRA, which I applied to. And that's it. I don't know if there's anything else you think I should add, but I tried to give it a different angle than Jonathan, who said a lot of things I agreed with. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the additional points as well. So we can move, I think, to Dr. Catherine Schuster.
Hello, everybody, and thanks to be part of this webinar. So I'm here to speak about University of Strasbourg. University of Strasbourg is located at the east of France, at the border with Germany and Switzerland, and is a very international university. With and also the city is very international because she hosts also the European Council and the Human Rights Council. So the city is very international, and the students are very happy to be in Strasbourg. So to talk more about the University of Strasbourg, University of Strasbourg hosts 55,000 students every year. This is a quite big university in France, and all 3 domains are addressed: law, economics, management, science, and life science and health, which is today our topic. As an INSERM scientist, so I'm from the National Institute of Health, and I'm paid by the INSERM, which is dedicated to human medical research and health. And I'm also the head of this doctoral school that hosts 530 PhD students every year, in 1 year. And we have 460 PhD supervisors in our PhD school. We have 31 research units covering all aspects of life science and health and environment, and 150 research teams. So in the frame of these research teams and also research units, we host almost 30% of foreigner students from everywhere from the world, especially, of course, from Europe, but also from Africa and Asia, and more from India. So as my colleagues said, one perhaps point that is always addressed is the problem of the language, because everybody knows that in France, most of the people speak French and are proud to speak French. And in science, it's not the case. All our units are really bilingual. And even in my institute, I'm also deputy head of Institute of Liver Disease and Viral and Liver Disease. We host 10 different nationalities, and the working language is always English for everything. As well, in my doctoral school, we have also only English as a speaking language. So contacts, social events, anything is always in English, and this is not absolutely not a problem. In Strasbourg, we have universities like Marseille, Bordeaux, and others in Paris. And we have also two in life science, two graduate schools, which are special programs in France that help students, PhD students, to have a very, very PhD with a big selection, and also grants to move, to go to other countries, etc. And this is also an asset, I think, from Strasbourg. We have one on molecular and cellular biology, specialized, and one on pain, the pain initiative. And this is something very original in France, I guess. I'm sure. So University supports the PhD programs. In the University of Strasbourg, we have 2,500 PhDs every year. And for the life science, University of Strasbourg, with the help of the Ministry of Science, of Research, grants 120 PhDs every year and 40 for the life science. So every year we have 40 contracts, 3-year contracts, to do a PhD in life science in Strasbourg. The selection is very hard, of course, and but we have also some PhD international programs that are driven by the institutes. And of course, as my colleague said, every lab has also European grants and other grants. So, voila. So, what can I say? So, just perhaps as an example of Indian students that came to Strasbourg. In Strasbourg, in my PhD doctoral school, we have, I think, perhaps 20 Indian students, candidates. But in my lab, we hired last year an Indian guy at the INSERM as a permanent position. And this guy came after his PhD he was, how can I say, mentored by a person that was in Strasbourg, that came back to India, made a PhD, and then came as a postdoc. And now he's hired in our lab as a research scientist, full-time scientist. So everything is possible for Indian guys, I think, and we would be happy to host you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Schuster. And finally, we can move to our fourth panelist for the day, Dr. Sandri Nonjay. Can you hear me? You're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I have tried to share my screen. Do you see my screen or not?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So thanks a lot for the invitation. So today I will say a few words about Université Paris-Saclay. So the Université Paris-Saclay is close to Paris, in the countryside, but don't worry, the Eiffel Tower is not so far, and you can visit easily Paris. So Université Paris-Saclay was built recently. We have 10 academic faculties, such as Faculty of Medicine or Pharmacy or Faculty of Science, and we have 4 component institutions, 7 national research bodies such as CNRS, CEA or Iyanar. The three main domains in the Université Paris-Saclay are the life and health sciences, sciences and engineering, and social sciences and humanities. So why choose Université Paris-Saclay? In fact, we built this huge university to try to gather many students from different domains, and we have almost 50,000 students, among them 4,600 PhD students. They are divided in 17 thematic graduate schools. And we recently had the good news to be ranking at the 14th places. So the PhD studies are very similar in Paris-Saclay, as my colleagues already explained. We have more or less 4,600 PhD students. Nearly half of them comes from abroad, and they are divided in 20 doctoral schools. So for the funding, we have each year nearly 350 full PhD grants, but for foreign PhD, we have also some opportunities to build some co-tutoring. So we have this ADI program, which grants for double degree PhD. And we have each year nearly 30 grants. So it's quite easy to build PhD co-tutoring with this kind of program. We have also some co-funding with private companies. So I will give one example of doctoral school. In Paris-Saclay, we have 20 doctoral schools, but I am the deputy director of one doctoral school dedicated to therapeutic innovation. So in these doctoral schools, we have 35 units of research. We have nearly 500 supervisors and 300 PhD students. So in these doctoral schools, we have 7 poles with drug delivery, medicinal chemistry, structural biology, immunology and biotherapies, pharmacology and toxicology, physiopathologies, and microbiology. So all the PhD students are dividing in these 7 multi and interdisciplinary poles. We have the gender balance, even a little bit more of women. And here you can see the origin of diplomas opening access to PhD. So of course, the majority of master students come from France, but we have also master students from foreign countries, nearly 15%. For the funding, the majority of the funding comes from the French ministry, but we have also private contracts and we have foreign funding. 10% of foreign fundings. This means that PhD students come with funding than their own countries. In my doctoral schools, we have 40% of foreign PhD students, nearly 35% from Asia, of course, much more from China than from India, but few Indian PhD students also. We have 20% PhD students come from Africa, 15% from South of America. But of course, this means that the English is the language in research labs, at least. Not maybe outside, but in the research labs, English is the language. So to help PhD students in France, we have the International Welcome Office, which can help foreign students for the visa applications, for example, the accommodation, bulk account, and tourism and everything. And we have many partnerships with universities across the world. So more than 300. So even with India, we have this kind of partnerships. And at the end, after 3 years or 4 years, you have this diploma, very good diploma, and you have this nice graduation ceremony. So I thank you. If you have any questions, we can discuss now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ongeri. So Just to finish, we're going to ask our alumnus who has joined us today to introduce himself as well as share his experience of being a researcher in France, your professional experience, your personal experience as well.
So hello everybody. So thank you. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to share the wonderful experience that I've had of doing a PhD in France. So I did my PhD from the University of Nantes, which is in the west of France, in structural bioinformatics. So if I had to sum up the experience of doing a PhD in France in one word, it would be "c'était génial," which means it was an amazing experience. It was very, very fulfilling and rich experience, not only from my scientific and professional point of view, but also from cultural and intellectual development. It was a very well-rounded experience. So there are a couple of reasons why France is a great destination for doing PhD studies. So one is that it is very student-friendly, as in there are student aids for everything ranging from food and accommodation to even up to seeing movies in theaters. There are specific discounts for students. So that was something very new to me actually. And it's also very research friendly, as in, as Ambika already said, the PhD is only for 3 years. So you can dive straight into your research and you can do courses of your choice to gain credits towards your PhD. And so you are not wasting 1 or 2 years doing complete coursework. So you can dive right into your research and you can do the courses of your own choice. And also France, I've seen a lot of very strong collaborations between the university and the university, which can be for domains like health sciences. So there are strong collaborations between, say, theoretical and experimental groups, which can be very key in health science departments. Also, as many of the panelists mentioned, the language is really not a barrier, and but it definitely does help to pick up a little bit of French before you reach France for practical reasons, to socialize and for day-to-day life. So one of the, I would strongly suggest that you visit, say, Alliance Française to pick up a short course in French, which will greatly help you when you reach there. And of course, the lab members are there, are very, very helpful in teaching you French. Say you make an effort, they make double the effort to teach you even more French. So that was a great experience on the whole. And I look forward to answering any questions if you have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Vetrievel. So I think what we can do is we can dive right into all of the questions that have come up, during the time that all of the panelists were speaking. So we actually have quite a few questions. So I will explain the question. I will call out the question, and whichever panelist is comfortable with answering that, please go ahead and answer them. So the first question that we have is, what is the scope for cancer research in France, and what are the requirements to get a PhD program in cancer research?
So there are several dedicated centers in France. Perhaps the most famous is the Institut Curie, which has cancer focus to its research, but there are several others in Paris and in the major cities. Very often it's an association between a hospital and a research institute, and it's pretty much the same requirements as for any PhD program, ideally a master's degree with a research experience. And then once again, it's the funding opportunities that you've heard about, with additionally certain charity funding that's available in France to help people during their cancer-related PhDs.
Perfect, thank you so much. The second question that we have is, what is the scope for a PhD in pharmacy and pharmacology? PhD in pharmacy and pharmacology.
I'm not so aware of that, but I know that in most medical faculties, there is pharmacology and pharmacy departments, where again, they will have their own funding systems in order to allow PhD students to come and join them.
From our side in Strasbourg, pharmacy is included in the life science doctoral school, and the rules are exactly the same than for the other students, cancer, what you want.
Perfect, thank you so much. The third question that we have is, are there any fully funded opportunities in health sciences in France?
You mean full grants for 2 years? So it is yeah, sure. In Strasbourg, for example, we have 40 full grants from the ministry, and we have all the students are paid during the 3 years. This is a mandatory thing with a minimum level as the minimum salary in France. So no problems for.
Thank you. The next question that we've received in the chat is, there is a student who has done an MPhil in clinical psychology and also an MPhil in psychology from India, and is now looking for a PhD in clinical psychology. So how would the student go about looking for the program and yeah, with the requirements and everything in clinical psychology?
I can answer again. We have in some units that are dedicated to clinical psychology, and we have that in Strasbourg at least. And to know which labs are involved in what, you have to go to our websites, I think, and the list of the labs are, and then come in touch with the PhD supervisors. And as Jonathan said, this is always a match between a supervisor and a candidate, and discuss directly with the people, I think.
Perfect. The next question that we have is a bit more general. So a student asks if he can work and do a PhD at the same time. Is that possible?
Well, as Catherine just mentioned, all students are required to have a work contract in order to be able to be part of research institutes. So there's a legal requirement that they're getting sufficient funding that should cover all their living expenses. So in principle, they shouldn't have to work. If they want to work in their evenings, as far as I know, it's possible. But it's certainly not encouraged because people are expected to be working full-time on their research projects.
A PhD is really demanding in time, and it's not only a 7-hour work. So in my opinion, working beside, if you have a salary, as it is mandatory in France, you should not work in parallel, because this will just be a problem of timing then.
Thank you. The next question is, are there any institute-specific fellowships that are offered?
Well, I gave the example of this Century Institute, which is specifically for interdisciplinary research. So it's people who are interested in applying quantitative methods, maths and computer science to biology, for example. But that's just one example of the many such opportunities that exist in France, in different cities, in different thematic areas.
If I can add something also, we have a laboratory of excellence who is also providing PhD opportunities that you have to apply to, and some of them are dedicated to foreigners. So that's a way that foreigners can apply and get funding for PhDs.
People, PhD supervisors have also their own funding, and they can hire the people that they want, meaning that they have to have a master and so on, but then they can choose the people that they want.
Thank you. The next question is also a bit general. So what do you look for when you are looking for a PhD student? A PhD student, yes. That's what the question says. What do you look for in a PhD student?
Of course, we will have a look on the background, of course, and on the diploma. But then we will have a look. Also, we will have an interview with him. So he will have to present the project research he wants to manage, and we will check if he has independency, if he's really yes, independent in his work. I think this is very important also. So background and independency, I think. We can ask also to references from their previous supervisors also. We will ask that this kind of letters, or we can have some interview with their supervisors.
So personally, the thing that really makes a student stand out for me is when it's clear that the student has taken the time to look at the research that we've done and is able to formulate at least one question that would be relevant as a potential research project. So if somebody says, I would like to come to your lab because I wish to work on this question, and for example, it's not a question that we'd considered, but is a very good question, then straight away, that person is going to move up the list as far as interest on our side is concerned. What we don't want to do is send out 100 letters to labs saying, I'm interested in biology, I would like to come to your lab, dear sir or madam. Okay, those ones I just straight away delete.
And Dr. Schuster, you want to add something?
I can just add, we will check the marks and the diplomas, of course, the motivation and interview, as they said, and perhaps references that are, we check also in Strasbourg, Université, the university, where they are coming from. This is something that is very important. And we base our decisions also on the advice of other Indian people that can help us to call or to, yeah. So it's like that. Because we had also, I have to say, we had sometimes bad experiences also. So we are now more cautious, I think, in the choice.
Thank you so much. The next question is it possible to select a research topic which is of a great concern here in India, such as oral cancer, and do the field work back in India rather than in France?
In Strasbourg, we have co-agreements with different universities in the world and with India also. And there are some people who are partly in France and partly in their host university at home country. And this is also possible. Not so usual, but possible.
It is possible to have a co-tutoring. So I think we had these questions few minutes ago on the chat. So a co-tutoring is to do your research period half or at least 2 years in France or 2 years in India and 1 year in the second country. And this allows this kind of mutual research project. Otherwise, you cannot go with the research project to do of course, all your PhD in India. So you need to have this agreement and 2 supervisors, one in India and one in France, and the co-funding for this kind of research project. So for co-funding, we have this kind of ADI, I told you in Université Paris-Saclay, but also we have many European projects who can offer this kind of co-tutoring. And this co-tutoring will be in Europe, but Indian PhD students can apply to this kind of co-tutoring, but they will remain in Europe in that case, but maybe in France and Italy or France and Germany. Or
Perfect, thank you. The next question is it mandatory to have publications for accepting a PhD thesis proposal? Is it mandatory to have publications?
No, no, especially if the name is between 20 other names. I think it's not mandatory at all.
Thank you. The next question is a bit more specific. So it is, there is a student from visual arts and would like to explore Indian art therapy and also art science relations. And so is there a scope for this, is there scope for that through these opportunities in France?
I think in the University of Strasbourg, we have this topic, but not so, it's something very specific, but I think there is one. With the pain initiative. Within the pain initiative, there is a therapy, art therapy.
In any case, the candidates should have a look on the website of the universities, and they should find something, because this is really precise, so we don't know all the PhD possible in France, of course. So for this kind of very precise topics, you should have a look on the websites of the different universities in France.
Thank you. The next question is, there's a student who holds an MBBS degree, which is bachelor's program in medicine in India. And the student wants to know if he is eligible to apply for a PhD in France with this MBBS degree, which is a bachelor's program of medicine in India. It's just to let you know, it's a 5.5-year program with a 1-year internship included in it.
I think so, because even in France, in fact, the many PhD students from medicines do not have a master, a real master, in fact. So I think they are eligible, but they have to apply to the doctoral school and they will qualify them. So at least in Paris-Saclay, we have this kind of interviews just to check if really we would have, of course, the CV and all the background of the PhD candidate, and then we will have an interview with a jury, with different experts, just to check that they have the level to enter in a PhD program.
From our side in Strasbourg, we are not so keen of, I have to say, but we ask for an experience in research, meaning 5 months, 6 months, 9 months in a lab with research, real research, and that they have a master thesis or something like that, that they can prove that they did something. If it's not the case, it's really difficult to engage in a PhD, in my opinion, and the bad experience that we had is were things like that people have no experience and just medicine. Even in France, the French guys do master degrees mostly. So this is one of the things that are very discussed. And we have all, I think, here, exemption commissions that you apply, and then the commission checks if you are in the scope of a PhD program or not. If not, you could join and then come to the PhD afterwards.
Thank you. The next participant says that he or she has completed a master's in microbiology 5 years ago and has been working as an assistant professor. So would it be difficult for somebody with a profile like this to be considered for a PhD?
It depends if she has done any research during these 5 years, or did she only teach? Or it really depends. If she remained 5 years without any research experience, it will be difficult, I think. It really depends where she comes from and if she had the opportunity to do research.
Thank you so much. The next question is again a little general. So what's the normal living cost in France, and will the stipend be sufficient to cover this living cost while doing a PhD in France?
The grants have to cover. The minimum salary in France is 1,300 euro, almost netto, and this is what they got, and this is what people have. So it's possible.
It obviously depends a little bit on the town or city that you're living in. So some places are more expensive than others. So in Marseille, for example, you can find very reasonable accommodation for 400 euros a month, whereas I believe in Paris that is more difficult to find something at that sort of level.
Yeah, I completely agree. It varies a lot from city to city, but in all cases, the salary is really sufficient for leading a very comfortable life in all cases. Yeah. And the major expense is the accommodation.
So in Paris, in the Université Paris-Saclay, in fact, we accept grants above 1,000 euro per month. Okay, but in that case, we have the opportunity to get a room in the university to have a low accommodation cost. So an accommodation, it's a small room at the university. In that case, it's maybe 200, 250 euros per month, but it's a small room. While the classical PhD students who get at least 1,300 euros or more, they are not allowed to get this kind of room. Okay, so it's really for students, undergraduate students, master students, and for foreign people. So for example, in my lab, we have many Chinese PhD students, and they all get a room at the university.
Thank
but
you.
Minimum 1,000 euro.
Okay.
Minimum.
Perfect. So the next question is, what about students with disabilities or having a chronic illness? Do the insurance schemes or the grants cover any medical expenses?
Yes, this is mandatory. If you have a grant or if you have a contract, you will have the French social insurance, but it really depends. It probably won't cover everything, every cost, okay? Maybe half or maybe a part of it. So you will have to take a private insurance in that case to cover all the costs for health. I don't know if I answered to the question. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is a participant asking, what are the research-oriented scopes for artificial intelligence in medical imaging?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Of course, yeah. What are the research-oriented scopes of artificial intelligence in medical imaging?
I can answer, but I don't want to.
Sorry, no, I think we have this field almost in every universities, but you have to check on the website because this is a precise field and we don't know every field. But I know that in Paris-Saclay we have this field.
In Strasbourg also, but it's more science and tech than mostly than life science. It's in another domain. There are also national programs on artificial intelligence that grants PhDs all over the country.
Thank you. The next question is, can somebody do a PhD which is different from their master's thesis? Can they do a PhD which is different from their master's thesis?
Yes, certainly. So there's absolutely no restriction on changing. So there's historically in France there's been a tendency for people to stay in the same lab for their master's degree and then go on to do a PhD in the same lab because of the funding that existed. And now there are these new funding programs where the students are much more free to choose a subject that interests them, then it's much more open than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
So we have a similar question on the same lines. It says that, what if an applicant is from a different field or from a different domain and would like to apply to a different department? Will this be seen as a barrier? Would you like me to repeat that?
No,
Okay.
it's complicated to jump from one domain to another, or from one topic to another, which is too far away, in my opinion. And we had also bad experience with that. So you cannot come with a master in anatomy and then do environment microbiology or something like that, because the background is also important, always. Molecular biology is not the same than psychology, or so. Or it needs, at least if you're a super good student, 1 year of adaptation in a new field, like neuroscience or cancer. Is not there is a background that you have to have, I think. But it's my opinion.
Thank you. So the next question that we have from the participant is very specific to Professor Ongeri. So it says, when you said therapeutic interventions, the slide did not mention vaccines. So do you have collaborations for vaccine development and LNP-based delivery?
So therapeutic innovation means that we go from fundamental medicinal chemistry, structural biology, and we go until clinics. So we have many PhD students who works really to find new drugs, okay, to try to understand the biological target of a disease. So this is therapeutic innovation, okay? It goes from fundamental aspect to clinics. So we have also clinical PhD students in clinics. I don't know if it's clearer like that.
Thank you. And I think we have...
everything is around the drugs and disease, in fact, in this doctoral school.
Thank you. So I think we have two last questions that we can wrap up with. One of them is, are there chances of having some projects with which an individual can join a lab and then turn it into a PhD?
Can you repeat? It's not clear for me.
Are there chances of having projects with which an individual can join a lab and then convert that to a PhD?
So if the question is, can the student come with his own or her own project, if it fits with the research direction of a team and the team's open to it, then there's no reason why that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and also I'd like to, I know why the candidate is asking the question, because in India, we have this position called research assistant in the PhD labs. So it's like a project assistant. You're hiring somebody to do a project, but there's no commitment, like giving a degree involved. But if the person is good, then the institute can absorb the student. So it's like a backdoor entry for PhD. So do you have anything, something like that? I think that's what they wanted to know.
And so specifically on that, yes, there are research assistants who then decide that they want to do a PhD. That does happen.
Thank you. And the last question that we can wrap up with is, again, a quite general question. What factors should be kept in mind while approaching supervisors, thesis supervisors?
It's more or less the same question as the one before, no? I think. Yes, I think I will repeat what Jonathan said. They have to have the good background, of course, but they have to explain the project, because to apply, for example, in the lab, we advertise some research projects. So they can find on website that we have opportunities, or we offer some PhD research programs, and we already mentioned the project. So of course, the candidates should have read something about the project. Of course, they should not come and say, okay, I have a master in medicinal chemistry or in whatever, and I want to work on your project, and they don't know anything about our project. I think we already answered to that question.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds good. So I think those are most of the questions that we had. And what we can do is I'm going to be leaving the links that Ambika mentioned right at the start. So I think Alina can put them in the chat box. And also the email IDs of any of y'all, so that students can contact you. If it's okay with you, you can put your email ID into the chat box. And Ambika, yours as well. I will post yours in the chat box so that students can contact you. So I think we should, I think we will close now, but thank you everybody for being here today and for this very informative session for all of the participants. So Ambika, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think it's pretty clear and has been a fantastic session answering so many questions. So we tried to put forth most of the questions which came on the chat and asked to us otherwise. And if you have any more clarifications, you can actually contact the panelists if they would like to leave their email IDs, or you can contact me. I will leave my email ID here. So if you have any specific questions, we'll be happy to get in touch with you and answer it for you. So yeah, that's all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll just wait for everybody to leave any details that they want in the chat box, and we can close after. So if y'all would like to make any closing remarks, anything that you'd like to mention, please go ahead.
Can I add something? I can give my email address, but can you collect maybe? I think it's really maybe more efficient if you collect many questions, okay? Because otherwise, I know that if we receive, I don't know, 100 emails, probably we won't be able to answer individually to each question. So maybe if you can collect the questions, it will be easier to answer. Or if we have a forum, or I don't know, if you can manage to have a forum where we can answer to everyone in once, probably. It will be easier, I think.
Yes, we can try doing that, making a questionnaire kind of a thing, and probably they can send the questions to me, and I can see who does it fit, and then I can send it to you.
Okay.
I added the doctoral school website in the chat.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much for attending, everybody, and wishing you a lovely evening ahead.
Thank you.